அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இந்த மாலை பொழுதில் நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் இந்த அறிவரங்கம் நிகழ்ச்சியில் கலந்து கொண்ட உங்கள் அனைவரையும் வருக வருக என வரவேற்கிறேன். பேரவைக்கு இந்த வருடம் 5ஆம் ஆண்டு. இந்த 2023ஆம் ஆண்டில் பேரவை பொங்கல் முதல் இந்த அறிவரங்கம் நிகழ்ச்சி வரை மொத்தம் 16 புரோகிராம் நிகழ்ச்சிகளை தொகுத்து வழங்கியுள்ளது. இதில் குறிப்பாக இயற்கை வீட்டுத் தோட்டம், இலவச மருத்துவ முகாம், தங்கர் பச்சானின் திரைப்பட கண்காட்சி, தமிழ் பள்ளிகள் மற்றும் தமிழ் ஆசிரியர்களுக்கு பாராட்டு விழா போன்றவை பேரவையின் ஒரு புதிய முயற்சி. இப்பொழுது கல்லூரி பயணம், நிதியுதவி, நுழைவுத் தேர்வு குறித்த ஒரு அறிவரங்கம் மற்றும் கேள்வி பதில் நிகழ்ச்சி. இதில் சிறப்பு பேச்சாளராக திரு எரிக் ஜின்ஸ்பர்க் அவர்கள் கலந்துரையாட உள்ளார். எரிக் மற்றும் உங்கள் அனைவரையும் வருக வருக என வரவேற்கிறேன். Good evening everyone. New Jersey Tamil Paravai welcomes you all to this Arivarangam College Journey Financial Aid SAT Update. This is 5th year for NJ Tamil Paravai. So far, we have organized 11 events in 2023. Specifically, natural gardening, free medical camp, Tamil teachers and Tamil school appreciation are the new initiative of this year. Now, the college journey, Arivarangam and question and answer session. On behalf of New Jersey Tamil Paravai, I welcome you all and Eric. Let us start with this session with Tamil Thai Valthu. I invite Mrs. Srilakshmi Kalyana Sundaram to sing Tamil Thai Valthu song. Thank you all. தமிழால் தமிழராய் நியூ ஜெர்சியில் ஒன்றிணைவோம். நன்றி.
நீராறும் கடலொடுத்த நிலமடர்ந்த கெழிலொழுகும் சீராறும் வதனமென திகழ்வரத கண்டமிதில் தெக்கணமும் அதில் சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரித்தனலும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிளமை திறம் வியந்த செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்ததுமே வாழ்த்ததுமே வாழ்த்ததுமே. நன்றி.
வணக்கம். என் பெயர் கலா நரேஷ். நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவை நடத்தும் காலேஜ் ஜேர்னி அறிவரங்கத்திற்கு உங்கள் அனைவரையும் அன்புடன் வரவேற்கிறோம். நம் நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவை 5 ஆண்டுகளாக தொடர்ந்து இங்குள்ள குழந்தைகளுக்கும் மாணவர்களுக்கும் மற்றும் பெற்றோர்களுக்கும் தமிழ் சார்ந்த தங்கள் திறமையை வெளிப்படுத்தவும் வளர்த்து கொள்ளவும் பல்வேறு நிகழ்ச்சிகளை தமிழராய் ஒன்றிணைந்து நடத்தி வருகிறது. இந்த ஆண்டின் துவக்கத்தில் ஜனவரி 22ஆம் தேதி பொங்கல் கிராமிய திருவிழா இனிதே நடைபெற்றது. பிப்ரவரி 23ஆம் தேதி வருமான வரி பற்றி ஓர் அறிவரங்கம் நடைபெற்றது. ஏப்ரல் 22ஆம் தேதி சித்திரை திருவிழா நடைபெற்றது. மே மாதம் 4ஆம் தேதி இயற்கை வீட்டு தோட்டம் என்ற ஒரு அறிவரங்கம் நடைபெற்றது. மே 14ஆம் தேதி அன்னையர் தின விழா சிறப்பாக நடைபெற்றது. ஜூன் 4ஆம் தேதி இலவச மருத்துவ முகாம் ஒன்று நடைபெற்றது. ஆகஸ்ட் 26ஆம் தேதி கோடை விழா நடைபெற்றது. அக்டோபர் 7ஆம் தேதி தங்கர் பச்சன் திரைப்படம் கண்காட்சி நடைபெற்றது. அக்டோபர் 14ஆம் தேதி குழந்தைகளின் தனித்திறமையை வெளிப்படுத்த ஒரு நிகழ்ச்சி நடைபெற்றது ஜெர்சி சிட்டியில். நவம்பர் 4ஆம் தேதி இலையுதிர் விழா சிறப்பே நடைபெற்றது. இந்த ஆண்டின் இன்றைய சிறப்பு விருந்தினரை அறிமுகப்படுத்த பேரவையின் பொதுக்குழு உறுப்பினர் ராமலட்சுமியை அழைக்கிறேன். Good evening. Welcome to everyone to New Jersey Tamil Peravai's College Journey webinar. This is regarding college admissions and financial aids. New Jersey Tamil Peravai is running its 5th year successfully. The objectives of New Jersey Tamil Peravai are to promote Tamil language education, to nurture Tamil culture, and educate and encourage children, students, and parents through various programs. I invite our GC committee member, Ramalakshmi, to introduce our guest speaker today.
நன்றி கலா. நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் அறிவரங்கம் வழங்கும் கல்லூரி பயணம் நிகழ்ச்சிக்கு இணைந்துள்ள உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இன்று நம்மோடு இணைந்துள்ள நம் சிறப்பு விருந்தினர் திரு எரிக் ஜின்ஸ்பர்க் அவர்கள் சொல்யூஷன் பிரெப் நியூ ஜெர்சி இன் முதன்மை பயிற்றுவிப்பாளர். கடந்த 25 வருடங்களாக SAT மற்றும் ACT கல்லூரி ஆலோசனை தொடர்பான வகுப்புகளையும் பயிற்றுவித்துக் கொண்டிருக்கிறார். இன்று நம்மோடு இணைந்து உயர்கல்வி நிலை குழந்தைகளுக்கும் பெற்றோருக்குமான பல விஷயங்களை பகிர உள்ளார். அவரை வருக வருக என நியூ ஜெர்சி தமிழ் பேரவையின் சார்பில் வரவேற்கின்றோம். Good evening and welcome to New Jersey Tamil Peravai's College Journey Arivarangam event. I am pleased to introduce our chief guest, Mr. Eric Ginsberg, who has been teaching the SAT, ACT, and providing college counseling since 1998. He has a degree in communication, music, and he is a financial aid expert. He contributed to the bestsellers Cracking the SAT, Crash Course for the SAT, and 11 practice tests for the SAT and PSAT. He's going to share his experience, knowledge about these aspects, which will be very useful for high schoolers and parents. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Eric Ginsberg for today's event.
Hello, thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you so much to the organization for your invitation. It's great to be back. Can you guys all see my screen okay? Great. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. As we go through the college journey, talking about the SAT and financial aid, there are a lot of topics here. So I am going to go relatively briskly, and you guys will want to take great notes. But first of all, hello. Hi, my name is Eric Ginsberg, and I'm a master tutor at Solution Prep, where we do things like college admissions coaching and SAT and ACT prep. We do that both online as well as at our centers in East Brunswick, Wall, Little Silver, and Toms River. I am going to be taking questions tonight. There'll be a lot of time for Q&A. I want you guys to jot down questions, but if you think of something tomorrow, if you think of something after we've hung up tonight that you meant to ask me, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, questions@solutionprep.com. I do not mind taking questions after the fact, but we will be taking questions today right here, and I look forward to that. So let's first start with our top 10 most frequently asked questions, the ones that I just get all of the time. Let's just knock those right out of the park, right out of the gate. How many colleges should a student apply to? And the answer is between 5 and 10 colleges. You want to have some options, but you don't want to have so many options that the project is so big that you can't focus and do a good job at it. When the project is too big and the time is too short, we don't wind up submitting our best work to colleges. Should you apply to Ivy League colleges and other top tier schools? And the answer is yes, you can, but you don't want that to be your entire list of 5 to 10 colleges. The best list of colleges will contain about 25% reach schools. So that could include some Ivies and other top tier schools, about 50% fit schools where you really have a good chance of getting in competitively, and then about 25% safety schools, maybe schools where your program makes it a good school or where you can get into an honors college that would elevate that, but safety schools nonetheless. So again, about 25% reach, about 50% fit, and about 25% safety. How many essays will students have to write when they apply to college? Well, that depends on the colleges on your list, because the more competitive a college is, the more likely they are to assign their own essays, and the more essays they're likely to assign. So if you have, a list of 5 to 10 colleges where, they're a mix of, less competitive schools, then you're likely to only have to write 1, 2, 3, 4 essays in total. But if you have a list that's just full of Ivy and top tier colleges that all might have 3, 5, 8 extra essays, I've seen students with over 50 essays to write, and that is not a doable project when the clock is ticking and they have other things to do in their lives. Next question I get a lot is, should we apply early decision, which is a binding commitment that you can only apply to one college? And the answer is, if you have an absolute top choice #1 school that you would forsake all other colleges to go to this one, and you can afford the cost, then yes, early decision may be for you. But if you're torn between a couple of schools and you want to see how the scholarships shake out before deciding, then no, early decision is not for you. Another question is, what kind of extracurricular activities are colleges looking for, right? What are the good ones? Which are the ones that colleges like? And the answer, honestly, is it doesn't matter which activities students are engaged in during high school. It matters that students are engaged in activities during high school, that they are passionate, that they are committed to something. And it's kind of a myth that colleges want the most well-rounded students who've done a little bit of everything, because in fact, what colleges want is the most well-rounded student body made up of students of different passions who can come together and cross-pollinate and become greater than the sum of their parts. Should your student take the SAT or the ACT? And the answer typically is both, because about half of my students see their best improvement on the SAT and about half see their best improvement on the ACT. And, there's this idea, well, I should take a practice test of each, and then that will be the better one is the one I'll put all my training into. No. You want to train for both and then take both, and then you only send the better one to colleges. What about colleges that are test optional, where you don't even need test scores? Well, good scores can still help, and bad scores can still hurt. And there are some schools that even require test scores for particular majors, even if it's not for any admissions into the school. For this particular major, you might still, like a Bachelor of Science / a medical degree, BSMD program very often requires that. Nursing programs very often require test scores. So, there are colleges that require all test scores. And so let's just assume you might need them, and it's better to have great scores and not need them than to need great scores and not have them in that critical moment. Another question I get is, when is the right time to prep for these tests? And the answer is whenever you have about 4 to 8 weeks leading up to the test to really devote your attention, when you're not very busy with things like travel and sports and, all the things that keep high schoolers busy, but you can really carve out time to make that a focus. What about the classes you take in high school and those grades? And honestly, that is the most important thing when you're applying to college, is your grades, but also the level of academic rigor, because they're going to compare the classes your student is taking to the classes available at the school, and understanding that not all schools offer all classes. They won't hold it against you if you couldn't do certain things that weren't available, but they would hold it against you if you didn't do things that were available. So we'll talk about that tonight. And finally, my 10th most common question is, how much is college going to cost? And the answer is a lot more than you think. Because even a public education in New Jersey at like Rutgers costs about $38,500 this year per year. And that does go up at 3 to 5% each year. And, if you're looking for a college that will take from you $75,000, $85,000, $95,000 a year, you can find them. They're out there and they will take that money. So college can cost a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing. We're going to talk about a lot of this briefly tonight because I am kind of combining three bigger presentations that I do for like an hour or two into this so that you guys get a lot of good information. So let's start taking some great notes if you haven't already, and let's talk by working backwards. Let's work backwards from the first day of college, right? You're at school. It happened. But what happened before then? Well, you had to graduate high school, obviously. And before that, you had to make a decision. May 1st of senior year is National Decision Day, by which point you must make a deposit to a college. Otherwise, you no longer have an available seat. Before that, you have to sort through all those acceptances. And my goal for my students is 80%. I accept the fact, I want my students to accept the fact that you're not going to get into every school that you apply to, but if you can get into 75, 80%, that's a huge win. And before that, you have to receive the acceptances, and those roll out between the fall for schools that have earlier applications and even rolling admissions, all the way through about April 1st, tends to be right around there is Ivy Decision Day, when our most competitive colleges announce their acceptances. Before that, we have to apply to college, which some of those applications are due as early as October 15th, November 1st, November 15th for the early applications, and as late as like January 1st to March 15th for the regular applications. Before that, you have to apply for financial aid. And honestly, it doesn't matter if it's before that or after that. It matters that you apply for financial aid, and you can do it before the application with essays and letters of recommendation are ready, or you can do it after. We'll talk about that a little bit today. You got to craft great essays. You got to craft essays that make you stand out from among other applicants who maybe also have great grades and great scores, which are not enough. That's what you need to get qualified, but then essays are why a college picks this qualified candidate over another one. Before that, you have to research the colleges you're interested in and demonstrate your interest. Show them that you would actually pick them if they were to accept you, because that can increase your chance of admissions. And, when I tell people 5 to 10 colleges, some people think they should apply to 20, 30 colleges and then just, see which ones they can get into. But if you haven't done the research, then you won't write great essays and you won't demonstrate your interest. And so all of this kind of goes hand in hand with that winnowing down the list to the right 5 to 10 schools to apply to. You got to prep for and take the SAT and ACT, and junior year is testing year. And we'll talk about that today as well. You want to get it done during junior year so that in the summer going into senior year, you can focus on essays, on applications, which is a much bigger project than a lot of folks think. And, leading up to that and all the way through that, you got to get good grades so that you're eligible for those schools. You have to build a resume of extracurricular activities starting as soon as freshman year that will amount to something by the time you submit it to colleges. You need to explore your interests to build that resume. What kinds of things are you interested in to then go do those things, which then eventually become great essays. You have to strive for academic tracking. So as soon as 7th and 8th grade, students are being put in an academic track that will determine which classes are available for them in high school and throughout high school. And yes, you can boost up, maybe like one level, but it's much harder to jump 2 levels. Before that, you got to be curious. Colleges love intellectual curiosity. It shows them that's the kind of student who, is going to ask questions, is going to tinker, is going to dabble, is going to connect ideas. And then, of course, that brings us to today. So if you have a 9th grader, a 10th grader, now you know the whole kind of process. If you have a junior, you're in the middle of this. If your 11th grader is kind of in the middle of this now, your 12th graders are getting toward the end of this. And for those of you who have kids, younger than high school, I'm so glad you're here to learn so much about the process that is ahead of you. So most importantly, you have to make a plan, because people who say, I'll just do it later, later comes and they realize they were not prepared. So let's start planning now. And that's why you guys are here today. So the timeline is crucial because time is linear and finite. You have one chance at this, or at least your student has one chance at this timeline, whereas I get to do the same thing every year, and I get to see students make the same mistakes, and I get to see parents ask the same questions. And, I try to help as many parents and as many students be on the right track so that when the time comes, they're not tearing their hair out from stress and from time crunch and from rushing to get everything done at the last minute. So let's talk about what that timeline looks like a little bit more. In 10th grade, we're going to set the track. Of course, at this point in 10th grade, good grades are opening the doors for more honors college, for more honors classes, AP classes, things of that nature. In between 10th grade and what comes next, explore stuff. And you can do that sooner too, but experiences that you're going to write about in your essays. A lot of times students come to me and it's the end of 11th grade, beginning of 12th grade, somewhere in between. And I say, okay, so what's the story? And they say, I don't know. I just hung out with my friends. And it's good to hang out with your friends, and you should hang out with your friends, but you should hang out with your friends and do something, and also do other things than just hang out. In 11th grade, they say junior year is the hardest year. And that's true because you're balancing some of the hardest classes you've ever taken and also preparing for and taking these big standardized tests like the SAT or its competitor, the ACT. And of course, in 12th grade, you got to finish up strong. Colleges will see mid-year and even end-of-year grades. And so they don't want to see students whose grades are going down. And of course, they don't want to see students putting things off till the absolute last minute. And so many schools will give you opportunity after opportunity to turn your stuff in early and get extra credit for that in the means of, early decision, early action, rolling admissions. So you want to take advantage of that. So let's talk about building your resume a little bit. What kind of activities can you do that are going to look good? What colleges are actually looking for. We talk about sports, and lots of students play sports, and sports are great. But I guess a big mistake students make is they just play a sport. They just sign up for the team and go to practice and play the games. And then they want to write an essay about, I played a sport and I went to the practices and I went to the games. And, one time we won big and it's because I helped that time. That's not a great essay. And, if you're really into your sport, that's okay to be really into anything. And if it's a sport, fine, but don't just surface level. Practicing games. Look for opportunities. Your odds of getting a scholarship for this are like 2%. So don't just play. See if you can be the team captain. See if you can coach a youth team. See if you can find a job reffing or, working in a camp over the summer or, helping kids with special needs or, whatever it is that is related to your sport in a more well-rounded way. There are clubs, and clubs are a great way to get involved. And again, you have to do more than just show up. You have to make your mark. So, don't just join in senior year. They're looking for a track record. They want to see at least 2, but preferably 3 or more years of commitment. They want to see you moving up and taking on leadership responsibility. They want to see you, maybe starting a club about something that you're passionate about, if that's what you want to do. And, not just showing up to the meetings and dabbling a little bit here or there, but really get interested in what you care about. And of course, experiences, any experiences outside of school related to the major or a specific talent. When students tell me that, like, I want to be a doctor, and I say, that's great. How come? And they say, I want to help people. And I say, okay, but you can go, volunteer at the local soup kitchen and help people today without 8 years of college and hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical school debt. So why do you want to be a doctor? And the students who have had experiences, like they've done a camp, or they were in a club that was related to their major, or they did shadowing or an internship, they're the ones who can really answer that question, who have stories worth telling because they have those experiences. So whether it's that field, any field, get involved, see what it's about. Because sometimes students get involved and realize, oh, turns out I don't like this. I thought I wanted to do this since I was a kid, but now that I've done it a little bit, it's not for me. And that's a great thing to learn before you commit your life to it. And, one thing that can really help is keeping a journal. So many students, when I talk with them working on essays at the end of junior year, beginning of senior year, and I ask them, what'd you do? And they just can't remember. because for them, a year of their life is such a big percent. So 2 years ago, that was an eternity. But taking good notes throughout, big days, big projects, big anything, and it doesn't need to be anything formal. I have students just open up the notes app on their phone and just dictate a few sentences into it. They don't even have to physically write anything. They don't even have to physically type anything. But this way they can look back, they have those good contemporaneous notes from when they actually did it to then talk about it. So what matters the most to colleges? I said it before, academics, grades, 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 grades. And there are honors level classes, which are great. There are AP level classes, which are great. And these can give you an extra point in your GPA, and that can help with class rank. But usually colleges will look at your unweighted GPA. So that extra point in your GPA beyond rank really is not going to make a difference. For the college, what matters is what classes you were taking compared to what was available at your school. And some schools like Dartmouth and Brown, they don't offer credit for the AP work that students do. And they're told if you take this AP exam and you get a 3, 4, or 5, you get college credits. Very few competitive schools will accept a 3, 4s, and 5s only. And some of them, for certain classes, 5s only. And so, it's good to have those scores, but ultimately your grade in the class is what matters. And when parents say, well, gee, my student is really struggling in this AP class, but we know it's good for colleges, what should we do? I said, well, first of all, get a tutor, see if you can not struggle, see if you can do better. But if this class is, sucking your will to live, go down to the honors level or go from honors to whatever's below that, because A's are better than B's. A's are better than B's. That's the mantra. Okay. And even if you've taken the AP class, it does not necessarily mean that you'll be able to skip that freshman year course. And hey, a lot of high schools now offer dual enrollment classes where they are getting college credits through maybe their local county college or a state school or something like that. And that can be a great opportunity as well. But you do want to make sure that those credits are universally acceptable and not only accepted by that college. There was an issue maybe 5, 6 years ago where one of the high schools in our area was doing classes with Rutgers, and it turned out that only Rutgers accepted those credits and other colleges didn't. So it didn't help students if they weren't going to go to Rutgers. So, definitely ask those questions. And ultimately what you want to do is you want to challenge the student to improve from where they are, but not drown. So think about, where's your student comfortable, and push them to about 110% of that. At 110%, they can rise to the occasion. At 120%, they drown. Because we all know that high school is not as tough as college. And what we want is through high school to gradually increase their ability so when they get to college, they're ready for it. They're there. Because if they only do what they're comfortable with the whole time and never grow, they get to college, donk, and there's this big cliff and they are not ready for it. And then they don't succeed. They wind up transferring out, they wind up failing out, and that's not what we want. We want our students to succeed. So we're focusing on academics and also testing. Let's talk about testing. Let's talk about junior year. I said before is testing year, and PSAT scores are here. So this year has been very different. Typically PSAT scores come out in December, but this year, because it is the first digital PSAT offered nationwide for American students, they came out November 6th, which was 10 days ago, and today. So some of you guys may have students who just got their PSAT scores today. And I've noticed a lot of schools this year, not most, but definitely more than we've seen before, opting to have 10th graders not take the standard PSAT, but instead to have them wait until the spring, maybe March, April, to take a different test called the PSAT 10, which is a little bit easier than the PSAT. It's made for 10th graders. So if you have a 10th grader who did not take the PSAT, that may be why your school may be doing that later in the year. But either way, junior year will be testing year. So there are 14 tests a year, 7 SATs and 7 ACTs. And sometimes the ACT comes like right after the SAT, a week or two later. And sometimes it's like a month later. They kind of take turns, February, March, April, May, and then they both have one in June, and they kind of go back and forth. But every month except for January, there is at least one, if not both, of these tests available. And this year, because of the new digital SAT that we're going to talk about in a moment, many schools may elect to offer the school day test, which means the national test day may be, I don't know, March 9th, but your school may choose to run a test on a Wednesday, 2 weeks later. And that's something that they can do, especially for this digital test where the schools control the devices a little bit better when it's only their students in the school. We'll talk about it, but just be aware that this calendar is the national test dates and things may get weird this year. We're going to wait and find out. It's going to be very interesting. But most importantly, I want to tell you, don't test cold. A big mistake that families make is they have their students take the SAT or the ACT for the very first time with zero practice. And that's a good idea for the PSAT. The PSAT is the baseline. You don't need to prep for it. You don't need to study for it. Let's just see what you can get cold. And then we measure success. We measure progress from there. There's no reason to go then take an SAT cold. We already did that with the PSAT. That's what it was for, this preliminary SAT. Once you get that score, now it's time to make a plan for, practicing and taking these tests for real. Because a year can just fly past you. And again, I do this every year and I see families make the same mistakes. So here we are. If you have a student in 11th grade, they're going to graduate high school in 2025. If they have not started taking the SAT yet, if the PSAT was their cold test and now they're ready to look ahead, the December SAT is in 2 weeks, so that's not going to happen. And that's the old test. The PSAT this year aligns with the new test that launches in March. There is no SAT after December 2nd until March. So we're going to look at March, that's March 9th, May, that's May 4th, and June, that's June 1st. And because it is to your benefit to take these tests more than once and just submit your best. And it's to your benefit to finish during junior year, during 11th grade. So March, May, June, 3 tests and done, and you don't have to do it anymore. Colleges don't care how many times you test, and everyone should test at least twice. 3 times, totally cool. 4 times, it starts to get to feel like punishing yourself or punishing your students. Don't punish your kids, guys. At least not with this. But, I think an important thing to understand about that, like, yes, there are instances where maybe a student got very sick one day, and so maybe that it doesn't count. But in general, 2 or 3 is great. That's the goal. They don't care how many tests, they don't average, but 2 or 3. Now, if you have a student in 10th grade, class of 26, or 9th grade, class of 27, okay, well, you have a lot more time to make a plan, and the test won't be changing in the middle of your 11th grade year like it is for this year's 11th graders. So the best first test to take could be either the end of August or the beginning of October. You start prepping in the summer, either the beginning or the end of the summer, and then you take your first test. And then you can take your second test, maybe December or March. It's flexible. Think about how busy you are and when you have more time to focus on it. And then if you need a third and final test, you've got May, you've got June. Think about when your AP exams are. Think about when proms are and spring sports. And, you get a lot more flexibility, because students who say, like this year, the 11th graders who say, I want to wait till the digital test. Well, they're in a much tighter time crunch. March, May, June, there's no flexibility there unless they want to bump it into the summer. And you don't want to bump it into the summer because that's when you need to work on the next project, essays and applications. And it is very hard to do both at once. And every summer, I will have students who are going into 11th grade prepping for the August test and students who are going into 12th grade prepping for the August test. And every time those 12th graders look around the room and say, oh, this is a really good idea. I should have done this last year. You guys are smart. I should not have waited this long. They all say the same thing. So I'll say it to everybody who will listen to me. Let's talk about some myths about the SAT and the ACT, and then what the reality actually looks like. One is that these tests are going away, and these tests are not going away, because test optional means that you have the option to send scores, and that good scores can help. Very few colleges are test blind, which means they will not look at scores at all. The public universities in California are test blind. Some schools require test scores. Some majors require test scores. And every school that is test optional would like good scores if you've got them. And that can increase your chance of getting in. So no, these tests are not going away. And in fact, the list of colleges that go back to requiring these scores grows a little bit more each year since the pandemic pushed us to this big test optional moment. Another question, and the myth I get a lot, is the SAT and ACT are totally different tests. You can't possibly take both. No, you definitely can, because although they are arranged, formatted differently, the content on them is the same. They're testing the same rules. They're testing the same, material. It's just a matter of whether you can write on the test versus whether it's on a computer screen and the differences that entails. Another myth is, hey, there's free SAT prep, and that's not actually a myth. There is free SAT prep through apps like Blue Book Exams and Khan Academy, and it exists. The challenge is that the SAT and the ACT, these scores are not based on how many questions you get right, like your typical test in school, where if everybody earns 100, everybody gets 100. These tests are more like class rank, where your score is based on how you compared to everybody else testing in America that day. And so let's say for a moment, everybody got an extra 1 point on top of their GPA. It would look nice, but nobody's class rank would change. And because the SAT is like class rank, if everybody gets 5 extra questions right, nobody gets a better score. So if there are students out there using the free test prep and that's all they're using, then you need to beat them. You need to get better prep than the prep they're getting, so that when they get more things right, you get more things right than they got to beat them. It's a race. It's a competition. It's a zero-sum game. A myth is that these are just a predictor of success or how ready you are for college or how well you will do in college. And that is not true, and that has never been true. These only measure how well you can take these tests compared to other students in America that day. That's it. There are 17 measurable types of IQ, about 8 of which we use in education, about 2 or 3 of which are measured on this test. And these tests do not measure everything about your student. They're just something. And to whatever extent colleges use this test, it's something to differentiate students, especially where grade inflation is a very real thing. In 1998, 37% of high school students graduated with an A average, according to the College Board. And 20 years later, by 2018, that number had jumped to 55% of students graduating with A averages. And if 55% of students graduate with an A average, that means there are students in the bottom half of the class who have an A average. So how can a college tell students apart? This kid's got A's, that kid's got A's. The SAT and ACT are helpful with that. That's what it's helpful with, but not a predictor of how well you will succeed. A lot of students think they need a perfect score. They need every single point. Some parents have said to me, full score. That's not how any of this stuff works. So the SAT and ACT are just one qualifier that colleges use to consider students. And if you qualify on this criteria, check, and they go to the next criteria. That's it. I had a family come into my East Brunswick Center maybe a week or two ago, and they said that their daughter had an 800 in math, perfect, on the SAT, and a 760 in verbal. Nearly perfect. I said, great. What are we doing here? And they said, well, we'd like to get her tutoring in verbal because we think she can improve. And I said, she doesn't need to. There's no reason. There are no colleges looking at a 1560 and saying, you can't come to our college because of that 1560. But what they do is they say, you can't come to our college because all you have is a 1560, and you didn't do any of those other things we talked about with the activities and the intellectual curiosity and the passions. You're missing that because all you did was practice for the SAT. That's all you put your time into. And you need to have more than just test scores. So no, you don't need a perfect score. You just need to qualify for that college. Another myth is that the new SAT will be easier. And what they've been saying is students feel less stressed and that it's shorter. And what people hear is, so it's easier. No, it is deceptively less stressful. It feels easier, but it is actually not. In fact, the College Board, the people who make the SAT, have guaranteed to colleges that the concordance from the old test to the new test would be identical, which means they're not going to suddenly have a flood of students with higher scores. that they suddenly have to admit all these students. Well, you have the high scores, I guess you can come here. Not how that works, guys. Think about it. Think about it logically. That's not how this is going to work. All right, so let's talk about how the digital SAT is different from the SAT we've had for the last 8 years and from every paper and pencil test we've had since the beginning of the 1900s. First of all, obviously, it's taken on a computer, computers or tablet screens, which the student can use their own device. They can use a device assigned to them by the school, or they can even get a device lent to them by the College Board. And if your student does not have their own device and they're testing on a national testing day at a school, they may need to request that device, which means they may need to register for the SAT up to 30 days before the actual deadline so that they're guaranteed a device to use if they don't have their own. There's no time penalty if your computer crashes, and you don't have to be on the internet while you're taking the test. Once you've downloaded the app, all the information is there on your device, just waiting to be encrypted by the code you'll get. But if anything happens, their progress will be saved. There is no longer a reading section and a writing section. There are two reading, writing sections. Reading, writing, reading, writing. And they have short stories with one question each. No more 10 or 11 questions in a big story. Now it's a short story with one question. For the math, now the calculator is allowed the whole time. There's no longer a non-calculator section. And in fact, they will build a calculator in to the platform for students to use. They can use their own, but they can also use the one there, which is especially helpful with the graphing questions and systems of equations where the cursor can just point to the intersection or point to a vertex. Very helpful. It's an adaptive test, and that's probably the biggest difference between the old paper and pencil test and this new digital test, which means that in the first section of reading and writing, and later in the first section of math, students get a mix of easy and medium and hard questions. And how many, not which, but how many they get right will determine their track for their second reading and writing, their second math section. So if they do well, they will get harder questions in the second section, and their score will be between 400 and 800 in that section. And if they do poorly in the first section, then they'll get easier questions in the second section, and their score will wind up between 200 and 650. So they will automatically lose 150 points if they wind up in the lower section. They will not be able to get higher than a 650 if they're in the lower second section of a subject. So students who walk out of the test and say, it was really hard, that's because they got the hard questions at the end, which means they were in the higher track. But students who walk out and say, oh, it was so easy, everything was so easy, it means they got the easier questions in the second section, which means they were probably in the lower track. So that's why it's very deceptive. This feels less stressful nonsense. Does not mean easier test or higher scores. Some big changes. There's no more writing on the test. It's on a computer screen, but they will give you scrap paper to write all over as much as you need. And instead of 3 hours of testing, it's now down to 2 hours and 14 minutes. And so a lot of, they keep saying it's about 2 hours. That used to be 3 hours. Now it's about 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 14 minutes plus a break, plus instruction time. You will be there for 2.5 to 3 hours, but it's 2 hours and 14 minutes of testing material. So it is shorter, but the adaptive test is supposed to account for that. Some small changes. There are no more imaginary numbers on the math. The open-ended math questions are now mixed in with the multiple choice instead of being all grouped at the end. And the experimental questions are now mixed in instead of being its own section at the end, which means when students are struggling on a question and really scratching their head and struggling, that question might not even count. That might be an experimental question, and there's no way to find out, and they will never know because you will not get to see your questions anymore like you used to. When you were done with the test, they would send you your score, and if you paid them $18, 3 out of the 7 tests a year, they would send you the questions to look at. Not anymore. Questions are gone. It's a dynamic bank, and they want to reuse them, so they can't make them public. So what math topics are on the SAT? A lot of arithmetic, a lot of Algebra 1, a good amount of geometry, but they're going to continue to give you the formulas in a little drop-down window. There's still a little bit of probability and statistics. There's still a little bit of trigonometry, not a ton, and there's still a little bit of algebra too. And this is probably the biggest mistake people make when they're recommending the timeline for the SAT, because a high school guidance counselor has to wear so many hats, and they are not math teachers. And so they don't necessarily understand that when the SAT says it goes up to algebra 2, that does not make it like a final exam for algebra 2, where it's all algebra 2. There's about a pinky's worth, and it's only up to about mid-year algebra 2. And obviously, if you get the harder second math section, you will have more of those questions. Whereas if you get the easier section, they don't give you as many of those tough questions. And many questions are word problems, and some have charts and graphs. So, study skills are something students can be working on between now and then. Test taking skills, critical thinking, these are the things that are being tested, and these are the things that students can work on in their own time between now and then, so that they're not, starting in 8th grade taking practice SATs. Don't torture your children, please. Let them see the light of day. What about the ACT? The ACT is the competitor to the SAT. There are no big changes announced right now that we expect coming, and we recommend students take both. As I said before, about half of our students see their best improvement on the ACT. What's on it? Let's talk about it quickly. Just like the SAT, there are 4 sections. One of them is English, and it tests the same writing and language rules, grammar, punctuation, etc., as the SAT tests. In the math, it's the same subjects, but it does go to a higher level of all the way to the end of algebra 2. The SAT tests a narrower array of topics on a deeper level. The ACT tests a wider array of topics on a more surface level. The reading is going to be more concrete and straightforward than the SAT. You still have those big stories with 10 questions, but it's very literal. It actually says the question in the story. It actually says the answer in the story for a lot of these questions. And for the science, the same kinds of tables and charts and graphs that we see in the math on the SAT, in the writing and language on the SAT, here on the ACT, get their own section where there are tables, charts, and graphs, and students have to answer, 5, 6, 7 questions per short story about those tables, charts, and graphs for most of the questions. So the big difference between these tests, apart from, of course, the SAT is now digital and the ACT is still paper and pencil in most places, is that the ACT is a lot faster. So it's straightforward, but faster. Less to figure out, faster. And there is still an essay, but it is optional, and colleges do not use it anymore. So if you sign up for the ACT and it asks with writing or without writing, you'll say without writing. You don't need it. So why does it exist? Because some states use the ACT the way New Jersey uses the NJSLA, or the way New York uses the Regents exams as a high school graduation requirement. And some states who use the ACT like that, they require the essay. So it's not for a college-bound students to need. It's for high school students in states that are not here. Each section is scored from 1 to 36. And then they average those, and you get a composite from 1 to 36 rounded to the nearest whole number. And that can be a struggle because a student can do a lot of work and get a lot more questions right and only go up like 2 points. And that feels, very, very defeatist. Like, I did all that work, I only got 2 points. But, 2, 3 points, that's a lot of points on the ACT and can really make a big difference. Over 2/3 of colleges will super score the ACT and growing, which means your best English, your best math, your best reading, your best science, even if they're from different days. Whereas for the SAT, about 90% of colleges will super score. And a big question we're getting right now is, will colleges super score between the old SAT, if my student took that, and the new SAT, if my student then also tests March or later? And the answer is maybe. In the past, no, they have not. But this time it's going from 1,600 to 1,600, not to 2,400, back to 1,600. So invariably, there will be colleges that say, yes, we will, and there will be colleges that say, no, we will not. And in fact, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to ask this question to a panel of college deans of admissions for Rutgers, TCNJ, Villanova, University of Delaware, and Princeton. And Princeton gave me a very quick no, we're not super scoring between the old SAT and the new SAT. UDEL, University of Delaware, said, Sure, why not? Like he's making up policy right there on the spot, and the other 3 declined to answer. So we're going to see what that looks like. But for the ACT, no big changes, so no big changes. So research in colleges is so important, getting to know more about the school. I had a student just the other night who was working on an application essay for something due on December 1st, and the college wanted to know, why are you interested in our college? And she had to start reading through the website and learning more about her major. And the more she read, the more she realized they didn't actually have what she was looking for. They didn't actually have what she wanted. And ultimately, she decided, I don't want to apply here. And that's a really good thing to find out before you apply. But it's also a really good thing to find out, I don't know, before November of 12th grade. Do the research in 11th grade in the summer. August 1st is when most college applications open. And so you want to finalize your list by then. That way you know which college application essays to write, which applications to work on, and you can demonstrate interest by writing an essay well about why you're interested in their college if they ask that question. You can demonstrate your interest by going to visit the college, by meeting their representatives. Let's do a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock. And in 30 seconds, what I'm going to ask everybody to do is I'm going to ask you to write down. I hope you have a pencil. I hope you've been taking great notes. I'm going to ask you to write down as many 4-year colleges in America as you can name. Abbreviations are fine. Acronyms are fine. I just care about quantity, okay? All right, so 30 seconds. Are you ready for this? And go. "15 seconds. 10 seconds, right faster. 5 seconds, abbreviations are fine. And finish the one you're writing, and then stop. All right, count them up. How many did you come up with? Let's see, can we use the chat? Does the chat work here? Are people able to chat with us? I don't even know.
Yes,
I'll tell you what.
yes, we can chat.
Great. If you can chat, put the number of colleges that you came up with right here in the chat. Let's see what we have. We have 6. Oh my goodness, 28 somebody had. Holy smokes. 14, 10, 4, 5, 21. Wow. 13, 16, 10, 11, 14. You guys are doing great. All right. Keep them coming. I'll give you another moment. Okay, you stopped. Okay, so let's do our experiment. We've now written up a bunch of colleges, and now I'm going to ask you guys, cross off the Ivy League colleges. Cross off Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Cornell, Brown, Dartmouth, UPenn. While we're at it, we'll cross up MIT and Stanford. While we're at it, I mean, Ivy League schools are great. Sure, they are. But it's not the only game in town. There are other pants than Levi's jeans. There are other drinks than Coca-Cola. And there are other colleges than the Ivy League. And in fact, you can see what test optional admissions has done to the applicant pool at a lot of these schools, where they've gotten maybe 50% or 100% more applications, which has then caused them to drastically reduce their acceptance rate for some of these top colleges. Here are the Ivies and a bunch of other top tier schools. Okay, so those 10 schools are gone. Next, let's cross off any college. New Jersey is the second most densely populated state in America because we have New York over here. We have Philadelphia over there. We live where the people live, at the crux of a lot of people and a lot of people. So for now, please cross off colleges in New Jersey. Please cross off colleges in New York. Please cross off colleges in Pennsylvania. And Connecticut is the third most densely populated state for the same reason. They have New York over here. They have Boston over there. So we'll cross off schools in Connecticut and Massachusetts. 5 states down. We still have 45 states to go, plus Puerto Rico and Guam. And then one more thing. If that college has an NCAA Division I athletic program, cross it off. Division I football, Division I basketball. If you see them on TV, they are D1. If they won the championship, they're D1. If they're in March Madness, if they're ranked for football, they're D1. All right, guys, if it's the University of, the name of a state, big flagship public school, it's D1. So cross those schools off. And let's see how many schools you have left. Put your new number in the chat. Count them up. How many do you have left? If you have 0, be honest. Tell me what you got. I got 2, I got 1, I got 0, 0, 0. Someone's got 7, and that may mean you don't know necessarily all of the Division I schools, or you picked art schools. A lot of 0s, some 2s. So what happened to our 15s and 20s and 28s is most of the schools that we think about are America's best known colleges. And if you want to get into these schools, sure, they look like a real fun time on TV, but you got to go to the college fair. You got to maybe see if there's an interview opportunity. You got to follow them on social media, email your representative questions, meet with them when they come for counseling. Somebody put 13. I don't think you know what D1 schools are. Or it's all art schools. We'll see. We won't. I don't know. I'm not going to look at your list. We're on Zoom. It's fine. But, look at these opportunities to go meet with these college representatives, to meet your person wherever you can, because these schools make it so hard to stand out. They just have way too many applications, way too many applications. So cast a wider net. Look at schools nearby those other schools you were thinking about. If you're thinking about Boston College and Boston University, look at smaller schools just outside of the Boston area. There's a lot of schools outside of Boston. If you're looking at, schools in New Jersey, look in Delaware, look in Maryland. Look around, see what's out there. So understanding finance is actually a very big topic, and I would love to spend as much time as I typically spend in a financial aid night. And when I do financial aid night for a high school, it takes me 2 hours. I'm going to give you a 15-minute version. I'm going to go quickly through just some of the high points. All right, first, the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and that opens every year on October 1st. You'll fill it out in October of senior year. Now, this year, it is not out yet. So if you have a 12th grader, it's going to come out sometime in December, and I cannot believe that today what is today, December 16th, right? It's the 5th day of Diwali. Happy Diwali. Hope you had a great holiday. We still don't know when the FAFSA is even going to open. That's so crazy. But that's because they're in the middle of implementing the FAFSA Simplification Act. And there are some things changing about the FAFSA, and that's what I want to focus on today. But the FAFSA is going to get cut down from 108 questions to just 36 questions. And again, when I spoke to that panel of college admissions deans, I asked them, their thoughts on this, and they unanimously felt that this is a change in name only. It is a, political change, but all the information will still be there. All the questions will still be asked. They're just going to get creative about how they count the number of questions and where they put questions differently. So the goal is to help more families fill it out by making it easier and less sort of looking for overwhelming. But I'm not sure, and we're going to find out. We're going to find out sometime in December. I don't know. I'm waiting just like everybody else is. And also the new equation will make more students eligible for aid, for free money off the cost of college. Now, what's changing? Let's talk about the bigger changes. I'll try to breeze through those. Which households' income and assets count will change this year. It used to be the household the student lives with more than half the time, but now it will become which household provides more than half of the student's financial support. And in a situation where a student has 1 or 2 parents in their one and only household, no change. No change. It's still the same household. But in those instances where students have 2 parents in separate households, if they live at one household, but the other household, through a combination of alimony, child support, and other financial contributions, pays for more than half of that student's expenses for living, for school, etc., then the other household that provides the money will become the FAFSA filing household. Very few families will make that change, but that's a change. Also, if you receive child support, that is moving from the income column to the assets column. I don't know why. It's just how the calculation is going to work. Which 529 plan and Coverdell's count is going to change. Historically, if the parents had multiple kids and multiple 529 or Coverdales for each of their kids, you'd have to count all of your kids. Now you only have to count the one who is applying for the FAFSA, who's going off to college. And that's good because you are legally allowed to transfer from sibling to sibling that money without paying the capital gains tax, without paying any penalties or fees. So, you know, that's a tricky way to just move the money to the younger sibling and until it's time to pay for the older one's bill. They're also changing the fact that if you have a 529 plan outside the household, maybe a non-custodial parent or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle, a godparent, that used to count as the student's asset, not anymore. It disappears as an asset, but in the years that the person outside the household uses that money to pay the student's college bill, it will count as income on the FAFSA, which means you don't want them to use that money until at least the fourth semester, the second half of sophomore year, because after that, your income years for FAFSA are over. So then it never counts if you just let them hold off on that till, you know, second half of sophomore year, junior year, senior year. I apologize. I have to blow my nose. I've been holding on to it for a while, but I have to. Sorry, folks. I'm getting over a head cold. Today was the first day I was brave enough to not take a decongestant, and that was a mistake. All right, so they're changing how small businesses and family farms count. In the past, they did not ask about family farms. They did not ask about a small business with fewer than 100 employees. Now they want to know the value of any business, assets minus liabilities. Same thing with family farms, asset minus liabilities. Oh, we're losing people. And another change is both parents will need to get an FSA ID. It used to be only one parent in the household was all you needed. Now it is every parent who will be counted on the FAFSA, which is every parent in that household, including step parents. That part has not changed. And the last big change is the multi-student discount is going away. So for those of you who may have multiple students in college during the same year, it used to say, well, gee, if you have $100, you can only afford $50 for each kid. So if college costs $60, you need help. $10 here and $10 there. But now, the way it's going to work is if you have $100 and each bill is $60, well, then you have $100. So you can afford $60, and you can afford $60 with your $100, even though you only have the money once, which is crazy, but that is a change that is coming for the 24-25 FAFSA that will open next month. There are eight reasons, almost at five official reasons, but 8 reasons we'll discuss to fill out the FAFSA. And a lot of families say, we're not going to get anything. My neighbor said, my cousin said, my sister said, there's no point. No, there is a point. In fact, there are 8 points. Let's talk about them. It is your first step for need-based aid from the government. It is your first step for need-based aid from the colleges. And I'll put a little asterisk on that because some colleges said the FAFSA is all we need. Some want the FAFSA and extra documents. Like Princeton, you have to go to their website and fill out their financial aid application. Other schools, you might have to use a document called the CSS profile on top of the FAFSA. So watch out for that. The FAFSA may not be all you need for need-based aid from colleges. It is your first step for loans from the government. It is your first step for certain major-based grants, irrespective of your need. And it is your first step for federal work study, which is a job your student can work while they're in college. These are the 5 official reasons. I'm going to give you 3 more to get us up to 8. But for now, that's what they tell you. So let's talk about free money. And I'm going to power through a very long explanation very quickly. Just going to give you some categories of free money that come from the government. The first is the Pell Grant. And this year, the maximum is $7,395. It goes up $100, $150. The last 2 years, $400 a year. So you can expect this to go up each year, and more families, about 500,000 more families will qualify based on the new equation. There's also the FSEOG, the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, which is federal dollars that the college decides which of their students are going to get it, and they have to prioritize Pell Grant recipients first. So it's possible to get all of it, some of it, or none of it, and the same is true for the Pell Grant. Then in New Jersey, and I know that we have some families here who are not from New Jersey. Most of us are from New Jersey, but we have access to the TAG, the tuition aid grant. You have to be from New Jersey and go to college in New Jersey. And for a less expensive school like a community college, it may be only $3,000 that they'll help you with. And then for, a public school, it may be only close to $10,000. For a private college, could be up to $14,404, depending on how much you need, as determined by filling out your FAFSA. Then there's the Community College Opportunity Grant and the Garden State Guarantee, which, if you earn under $65,000 a year, will make college adjusted gross income for your household after deductions, will make college free for the first 2 years at a community college and the next 2 years at a 4-year college in the state of New Jersey, public college in New Jersey. And if you earn between $65,000 and $80,000, the max you'll pay is, it's a discount, but it's not free. And if you make between $80,000 and $100,000, there's still a discount, but you pay a little more. And I'm not going to get in every dollar right now. Now, for the Pell Grant and the FSEOG, you have to file the FAFSA. And to file the FAFSA, you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. But for the TAG or the CCOG and Garden State Guarantee, these New Jersey benefits, you do not have to be a citizen or permanent resident. You can be on any level of visa. You can have any immigration status, documented or not. You just have to go to New Jersey's financial aid website and fill out the New Jersey Alternative Financial Aid application, and then you can still qualify for the New Jersey benefits, irrespective of immigration status. There's the Governor's Urban Scholarship, which is up to $1,000 if you live in specific zip codes for New Jersey. There's the EOF, Economic Opportunity Fund, for first-generation college students whose parents did not go to college and who are economically underserved, up to $3,050 this year. And finally, there are tax credits where you pay for college and the government pays you back. The American Opportunity Tax Credit can reimburse you up to $2,500 a year for all 4 years of college per student. So if you have twins, you can get this for both twins every year for 4 years. And then after 4 years, maybe they go to grad school, med school, law school, or maybe they just take longer to graduate, or maybe the 8th semester, though in the 4th school year, is the 5th calendar year, 5th tax year, and then you'd be eligible for the lifetime learning credit up to $2,000 per household. There are a lot of stipulations. I'm not going into all of them today. I'm just trying to give you some real basic information before I tell you about free money from colleges. Yes, colleges might want to help your student afford their education. It could be merit money. A merit scholarship is based on your students having great grades, great scores, great essays, great extracurricular activities, and this college thinking that your student is going to be a good fit for their school, is going to, make them look good, going to, be a good member of their student body, going to hire their graduates, going to give internships to their students, and most importantly, someday will donate to their alumni fund. And if they think your student is going to do that, they're going to try to recruit your student by giving them a merit scholarship. Other schools, they just know you have better options and they want you to pick them, so they got to grease the wheels and make you an offer. But this is also the, here we go. This is also the 6th reason to fill out the FAFSA, because some schools, not all, not most, but some will not release the merit money you were offered if you have not filled out the FAFSA, the government form, because they want to make sure that they're not leaving government dollars on the table before they reach into their own endowment. You can also get need-based money from colleges. As I told you, that was one of the reasons for filling out the FAFSA. But reason number 7 to fill out the FAFSA is that some schools are what are called need blind, which means the admissions office and the financial aid office don't talk. And admissions does not know if you can afford it when they decide whether or not to accept you. They accept you based on your merits and then send your file to financial aid, which then puts together an offer and they send that to you. But other schools are not need blind. And if they're not need blind, we call those schools need aware, where admissions and financial aid can talk. And so for families who say, we're not going to fill out the FAFSA, we have a lot of money, they're not going to help us, well, then you know what? Show them how much money you have by filling out the FAFSA. Because if they're need aware, that can increase your chance of admission. Yes, these schools want to create scholarships for students who need. But they're trying to balance the prestige of their university access to an education to students who otherwise would not be able to afford it, and also funding this college. So somebody has to pay the bill. And if you show them that you can, that can increase your chance of admission. There are athletic scholarships, but as I said earlier, only 2% of high school athletes go on to receive any athletic scholarships to help afford college. So I would not bank on a travel sports league that costs thousands of dollars plus your hotel stays to be what's going to really get you a scholarship. It can get you noticed by a college. It can get you recruited, but very rarely is that what's going to get you the money. And finally, you may be able to negotiate more money from colleges. And in fact, for all of my students, for all of my parents in February of senior year, I run a negotiating with colleges workshop where I teach them how to negotiate. All right, how to counter that offer. And that is reason number 8 to file the FAFSA, because if you don't have an offer, you don't have something to negotiate. So you have to file the FAFSA, get your offer, make them a counter offer. There's a lot about it. I could talk about it for hours. I would love to some other time, but my time is limited today. I will tell you that I do financial aid nights for about 15 high schools a year, and I have a few more coming up. And I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, but if you shoot me an email, questions@solutionprep.com, and let me know that you'd like to get information about when we're doing a full 2-hour financial aid night, all the nitty-gritty loans and work study and negotiating, send me an email. I'll send you an email tomorrow, and I'll let you know which financial aid nights you can attend to get all that information offline after today. All right, so there are some different applications that you'll encounter when applying to college, the most common of which is the Common Application, accepted by over 950 colleges, many of them the best known schools. The big mistake families make when they have schools on the Common App is they think if it's on the Common App and they've written their Common App essay that they're finished with all those schools, and that is not true, because any school on the Common App can still ask their own questions. And I've seen schools on the Common App ask, 3 essays, 5 essays, 8 essays, 12 essays. Even short answers still need to be perfect, still need to be stand out. Then there's the coalition application. If your school uses SCOIR, SCOIR, then you already have a coalition application, which can make applying to colleges through that very easy. If your school uses Naviance or Genesis or Maya or any of their competitors, you'd have to create an application. And I'll be honest, for the last 2 years, I haven't had any students who needed to create a coalition application. All of my students were able to get their stuff done between the Common App and also school-specific applications, because some schools like California schools and MIT and Georgetown and so many more, if you want to apply to that college, you just have to go to their website and fill out their application. So I predict that when your student applies to colleges, many or most, but unlikely all, will be on the Common App, and then some may be on another application like the coalition application or their own school-specific app. So there may be many supplemental essays. Don't take it lightly. So I have right here for you a fun little graphic of the optimal college admissions timeline that I give to all of my students. And in fact, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm going to put it in the chat. And you guys, what is happening here? Why do I have a little, there we go. I'm going to put it in the chat. So if you guys want to click on that, and you can print it and then stick it up on your bulletin board. This gives you an idea of when you should be doing which pieces of this big project, from SAT and ACT prep to your college search, so you can finalize it on time, to the college application process itself, and then even the financial aid stuff that mostly comes later. So, take it, use it in good health. If you have questions, of course, you can reach out to me. But now, in fact, if you have questions, I want to take them. So let's start having conversations. Gosh, I talked a lot, but you may have more things you want to know. And I hope I did not run over my time. But we are now here to just take questions. So you guys can put your questions in the chat if you want. Can they also unmute themselves? Is that something that they're able to do?
Yes, they can unmute and then raise your hand, so then you can ask the question to Eric.
Fantastic. Yeah. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. But let's take some questions. What would you guys like to know about literally anything we talked about tonight? For those of you who join us a little bit later, my name is Eric Ginsberg. I am from Solution Prep, where we do things like college admissions, coaching in SAT and ACT prep at centers in East Brunswick, Wall Township, Little Silver, and Toms River, as well as online. But right now we want to take your questions. So who would like to know what? Somebody's got a question in the chat. You mentioned AP classes. What about IB? So AP and IB are the same as far as applying to college is concerned. They're just competing brands that do the same thing, just like the SAT and ACT are competing brands. So AP I mentioned because in New Jersey, we have a lot more AP schools, but IB, great, all good stuff. Now, the question here in the chat is a 1540 on the SAT and very good extracurriculars good enough for the Ivies? So a 1540 is good enough to qualify for the Ivies. And very good extracurriculars is very good. But you need more than very good for the Ivies. You have to have something amazing. You have to do something amazing. And most importantly, you have to package it together in a way that they are looking to receive it. You have to write essays that communicate those good, not good, but great extracurricular activities. I had a student who said to me, well, my cousin got into Harvard. I said, that's great. You know, what's special about your cousin? And she said, well, she did perform on Broadway. I said, okay, that's something great, not just good, right? So, you know, that's what these schools are looking for if you're looking for schools at that level. Another question coming here in the chat. This one's coming from the YouTube. Oh, we have people watching on YouTube. What's the countdown on YouTube? How many folks are watching on YouTube? Is dependent visa holders, H-4 visa kids eligible for financial aid like FAFSA or others? So everybody who lives in New Jersey for at least 12 months, as long as you reside here, irrespective of immigration status or visa status, is eligible to fill out the New Jersey Alternative Financial Aid application. For the FAFSA, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. So if you're here on a short-term visa, you would not be eligible for the FAFSA. If the student has a green card, is a permanent resident, has permanent resident status, even if the parent is not, then the student is still eligible for the FAFSA, irrespective of the parent's immigration status. Another question.
Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, there is one person on the phone.
It's been great. It's been very helpful. Thank you. I just have a question regarding the Ivy League colleges financial aid, right? Like, how does Ivy League colleges financial aid vary from the other regular colleges? Because I know it is very scrutinized. So can you shed more light in it? Yeah, thank you.
Certainly. So Ivy League schools like to make a big deal about the fact that they will meet students' need. That said, they're all getting sued because they weren't doing it. And slowly they're starting to settle. It's very embarrassing. They do not give merit scholarships. They only give need-based scholarships. And, you know, you have to get in. But some schools like University of Pennsylvania, they're awful. I've had so many students get into UPenn and get offered nothing. And, you know, these colleges are very expensive and their threshold for need may be different than what you think is your need. And so a lot of these schools ask for the CS's profile. They really want to make sure that you have no other means of paying them, not that you would rather just hold on to your emotional support vacation house, or you'd rather just, you know, not liquidate some other assets to pay for your kids to go to college. So yes, they give a lot of need-based aid, but you really have to need it. No fake.
Thank you.
Yep, I got a question here from YouTube. I answered that one already. Is it a good idea to fill out the FAFSA on junior year or wait until senior year? So the FAFSA for freshman year of college will not open until typically October of your senior year. You will not be able to file that year's FAFSA until it opens. So no, you cannot fill that out during junior year. Question here is, how many AP courses are suggested a student takes in junior year? And the answer is the amount they can succeed at. So not so many that they are struggling, that they are, you know, getting B's and C's, the ones that they can do well. That's the right number. Could you talk about who qualifies for full ride scholarship? Isn't that the dream? But ultimately, if you need a college more than they need you, then they have no reason to give you a scholarship. So if you are willing to drop a bracket, then you can get big money. So I had a student who got into Brown, Ivy League school, had a near perfect SAT score, great grades, wonderful guy. He was accepted to Brown. He chose to go to Rutgers because he was offered the presidential scholarship because he was an Ivy caliber student. I had a student who was one of my students accepted to University of Pennsylvania and offered nothing, but he got into University of Southern California, great school, on a near full ride scholarship, which is, it's not the level of UPenn. But when I was out in Los Angeles last March visiting my sister and looking at colleges, I got to have lunch with that student on campus. And he said, Eric, everybody at the Honors College here was accepted to an Ivy League school, and we all turned it down because this scholarship was too good to pass up. So how do you get a full ride? Be willing to drop a bracket. Don't think you're going to get into the best school and also get a full ride for the best school. You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's the answer. Another YouTube question. What are the chances to get financial aid tuition? We asked this one already. Another question from YouTube. Can you shed light on rolling submissions? Does Rutgers offer this? So rolling admissions means that from the time the application opens, typically around August 1st, until the time it closes, whatever that date is, they are actively receiving, reviewing, and accepting students. So every year, I have students who start getting accepted to colleges at the end of August into September. They're already getting acceptances. And so applying early means you get looked at from among a smaller applicant pool, and they can spend more time looking at your application and getting to know you because they don't want all of the same student. And once they have 5 kids like your kid, okay, we're done with that kid. We need new kids. So if you can be one of those first few kids like your kid, then they pick you instead of waiting for somebody else to come along. So that can definitely increase your chance of admissions and give you an answer sooner. Boy, once you have that first acceptance letter, you feel good. You feel real good. Does Rutgers offer this? This is the first year Rutgers is on the Common App. So this is a brand new territory for them. They did offer early action this year. I don't believe that they're rolling admissions, and they have said that they do not give priority to early action versus regular admissions. They said that it's just a matter of breaking up their workload. So it's not all at the end. They have some they can do now and some they can do later. For computer science, what is important? The Ivy League tag or the curriculum of it for Columbia. They're offering only 40% of courses for computer science instead of a higher ratio of 60 to 70%. Well, certainly when you're looking at your field, you want to know what establishments are impressive for your field. My sister is in digital forensics, and she has told me that when an applicant has George Mason University on their application, that student's going to get that applicant is going to get an interview because that industry values that university. So if there are particular programs that are valued more in that industry, it doesn't matter if it's an Ivy League school or just the school with the better program for it. That said, an Ivy League degree definitely opens a lot of doors, definitely, creates a lot of opportunities. But again, your list should be 5 to 10 colleges, and only about 25% should be reach schools. And if there is an Ivy or Ivy caliber school or two that your student has looked at, has researched, understands, and really has fallen in love, that can be on their list. Hey, reach for the stars. But that cannot be the whole list. It cannot be Ivy or bust. I had a student who at the very beginning of the summer told me his list was Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Cornell, Brown, Dartmouth, UPenn, MIT, Stanford, Georgetown, and UC Berkeley. Oh, is that all? Is that all? That's not an acceptable list of colleges. That's an impossible project. That's what that is. But it does not matter the percent of the classes. It matters, is it the right program? And is it the right program for your student? What are the extracurriculars best for colleges? As I said earlier, there's no specific program like activities like this is the one they want. We cracked it. They're looking for students who are passionate. Yes, they want students who are passionate about this club or that club, about this community service or that, about this kind of arts and that. They're looking for students who are passionate about their thing, not dabblers, not people who did a little bit of everything and never really found their passion. So instead of looking at, what can you get your kid into, think about what is your kid into and how can they do more of it? How can they dig deeper in that? I have a hand raised if somebody wants to address that. Sorry.
Yeah, I was a little confused about the answer you said related to AP courses. So taking AP courses is good, or the scores or GPA. So I'm confused about you said something about that. So I'm confused about. Yeah.
Sure. So advanced placement, AP, or international baccalaureate, IB classes, but be they offered at your school, can give your student college credits, which is good because it can also save you money off the cost of college if they can graduate early. If they have enough credits to take off a semester, that'd be great. And colleges like to see that students are pursuing a level of academic rigor. That's the phrase they use, academic rigor, that they're taking a higher caliber of classes that shows that they're ready for the academic rigor of college. So, when we look at students taking AP and IB classes, as far as college admissions is concerned, they're comparing your student to the other students from their school and the classes available at their school. And so taking those classes can be good, but burying a student who can't handle that many really hard classes is doing that student a disservice. So we want to make your student shine with good grades above all else. Number one, good grades. Number two, academic rigor. Number three, college credits is some icing on the cake. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Another question here in the chat. When should we start researching about scholarships available and where to look for it? You can start looking for scholarships now because there are some scholarships that all you have to be is a high school student planning to go to college. There are other scholarships where you have to be in 12th grade or you have to be accepted to a college already. So you just have to look for the ones that are right for you for where you are in this process. And there are a lot of places to look, but some apps, some websites that I like a lot when I'm researching scholarships for my admission students. You want to jot these down. I like unigo.com, U-N-I-G-O, unigo.com. I like Apply, A-P-P-I-L-Y, Apply.com, used to be CapEx. And I like bigfuture.org. Bigfuture.org is the College Board's website. They're the people who make the SAT and the PSAT and the APs. And all of these are not scholarship websites. They are college websites where you can learn more about colleges that I feel have well-organized, well-curated, easy to search scholarship sections. There are other websites devoted just to scholarships like FastWeb and scholarships.net. There are apps like Scholly, and it is very easy to go down the rabbit hole. When I'm looking for scholarships, I start with Unigo, Appley, and Big Future, and then after that, I start Googling stuff. That's where I go. Question from Google Form. Oh, we have a Google Form. If I don't want to take any financial loan for my son's college education and don't fall in the less than $100,000 salary group, do I still need to fill up CS's profile to be considered for scholarship aid? So the CS's profile is only required for domestic students by about 155 American colleges. Most of them are private schools, some of them are public schools. And if none of the schools on your student's list asks for the CS's profile for domestic students, then you don't have to fill it out at all. If any of the schools on that list do ask for it, then if you're looking to get need-based aid from the college, or you want to be able to negotiate later, or you want to show them, look how much money I have, and increase your chance of getting into a need-aware school, then I would encourage you to fill out the CS's profile, which is very intrusive. It asks a lot of very nosy questions, but I have seen students get good money out of it, and so I do feel like it's worth it. How to select colleges if a student is undecided in selecting a major? That's a great question. Some colleges really are looking for students who have a focus, who know their major. And many of those colleges will ask for an essay like, why are you interested in your major? And other colleges are less interested in that. In fact, some colleges like Brown won't even let you pick a major until the end of sophomore year. They're just looking, Princeton doesn't care what your major is when you apply. UCLA, University of Miami, they don't care what your major is. They care if you are a good fit for their college. You'll figure out your major later, not to worry. There are also colleges like Boston University that have specific programs in place for students who aren't sure of their major, who want to get more of a variety, take some classes in different subjects and figure out their major through that process. So, the trick is a lot of students who think, well, I'll just apply to every Ivy and see if I can get into one. No, that is not an acceptable college search. That is not doing the research because they are very different colleges. There is no student who would be equally happy at all 8 Ivies. All right. Some of them might be for you and some of them might not be for you. But when you're looking at colleges, look for the ones that don't put an emphasis on major. And in fact, you can call them and ask. You can ask, do you accept students based on major or based on the college to which they apply? Meaning like the College of Liberal Arts, the School of Engineering, the College of Business, because some schools will say we're only taking so many students for the School of Business and we're comparing those applicants to each other. So it's more rigorous. And other schools say, nope, we don't do that. We just accept you based on you, and then we'll find room for you. We'll hire extra teachers if we have to. So finding out what those colleges are looking for will help you narrow down your lists. Another question here from YouTube. What is the difference between the students graduating from regular schools and STEM schools or boarding schools in terms of college admissions? So certainly if they're applying from a more academically rigorous STEM school, like a magnet school or a more academically rigorous private school or a boarding school, that does show a college that this student is more ready for the academic rigors of college and is therefore more likely to succeed and retain and graduate at our college. And so, yes, they do care about those things. At the same time, they're not going to take the entire graduating class of one particular high school, no matter how good it is. And so at those fancy boarding schools, they will try to mitigate, try to reduce the number of their students applying to the Ivies. And there are so many other great colleges, prestigious colleges, academically rigorous colleges, where your student can get a phenomenal education and a pedigree that is valued that are not the Ivy. And so, going to those boarding schools where parents spend $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, you better believe they think they're going to get into Harvard. And that is just not going to happen for more than 2 or 3 students in that grade, despite spending all that money. There was a point that I wanted to make. Oh, if your student is planning to go to graduate school, med school, law school, after their undergraduate school, the most important pedigree, the most important alma mater on their resume is their last one. Nobody in their medical career, in their law career, will care where they did their undergrad, only where they got their terminal degree. So if your student is planning to go that route, save money on their undergraduate degree where you can. Be willing to drop a bracket for a big scholarship. Be willing to pick a state college for in-state rates to then save that money to afford going to med school, law school, and put your emphasis on that for the top school. And in fact, there are many schools like Harvard and Johns Hopkins that are primarily graduate schools. At those schools, grad students outnumber undergraduate students 2 to 1. 2 to 1, double the number of grad students as undergrads. They are primarily graduate schools. So understand that when you're looking at those schools, most people who go there for their next degree, not for their first degree. Many schools have different GPA scales. Like, for example, some go up to 5 just to have all A's, while others only go up to 4.5. How does this scale for college? Colleges will ask you, what's your GPA and what is the scale? And then they will smush them all flat and make them all the same scale in the computer. And that will do the work for them. And in fact, they're even using AI now to differentiate what classes students are taking, the academic rigor, and like, how'd you get that 4.5? How'd you get that 5.0? To compare students on a more level playing field, irrespective. Some students in New York, their school goes up to an 8 GPA. Other schools, they're on a 100 scale, just 0 to 100. So that's important to understand. Another question: can you shed some light on students, U.S. citizens, finishing school in India and come to USA for undergraduate? What will be the challenges? What the process look like? So if the student is a U.S. citizen, then they count as a domestic student. If the student goes to high school, let's say in India or any country where English is not the primary language of their school, that's a question on the application. What country did you go to high school in? Was English the primary language that your instruction was given in? And if the answer is no, they may have to take an additional test called the TOEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language, TOEFL, the TOEFL. But beyond that, as long as they're a U.S. citizen, they'll be compared to other U.S. citizens in terms of determining their eligibility for that college. Colleges accept a smaller number of international students, but a growing number of international students. And generally speaking, for international students, they pay the full ticket price, the full sticker. Even at some colleges, they charge a premium for international students. They charge extra if you're coming from an outside country other than right here in America. But again, if your student is a U.S. citizen, then they will have the benefits of being an American student. I've had students who came to America for high school, lived with a host family, but their residence was technically in Asia, and went home in the summers. And despite the fact that they went for 4 years of high school here in America, they were international students. And the opposite would be true if your student is a U.S. citizen attending high school abroad. I understand you answered about extracurricular. I have particular questions about Taekwondo or karate. It's considered in college credit / admissions. Oh, they definitely prefer Taekwondo over karate. That's a joke. That's a joke. For college credit. So when we talk about credit, a class at college earns a student credits, 3, 4, 5 credits, and a student needs a certain number of credits to graduate college. 120 is the typical number, but some colleges make weird decisions. But if your student is going into college with AP class credit from their test, IB, dual enrollment, they have these college credits, it goes toward the 120 or so that they need to graduate. If your student is taking college level Taekwondo or karate for college credits, I mean, sure, it'll count toward an elective, but it would not count like toward physics or anything like that. And as far as college admissions is concerned, I mean, they're not going to accept you because you got your 3rd degree black belt, but they might accept you because you wrote an amazing story that rolled in the community service you've done through your martial arts and the job you've worked and how you've made a difference in your community through it. And if they can see in your story, in you, in that essay, a through line to someone they want to be at their college campus, they're not saying, oh, Taekwondo, this kid gets in. You have to explain it to them in a way that makes them excited about who you are as a person. So whatever the extracurricular activity is, whether it's martial arts, whether it's theater, whether it's independent study and research, whether it's community service, it's all good. It's about how you spin it. Everything works if you work it. Now the question, when is the right time to start college tours or visits? Generally speaking, I think 10th grade is a good time to take a couple of local college visits. Go see Rutgers or TCNJ, go see, Princeton, or, go see Monmouth or Rider. Look at some school, maybe Fairleigh Dickinson, just like 2 or 3 public, private, big, small, just enclosed city, just to see like, what does your student feel comfortable with? So that, starting going into junior year, you can really start looking at the kinds of schools your student thinks they like, knowing tastes may change. And one thing I do with all of my students, I invite my juniors and their parents to visit colleges. And I have visited hundreds of colleges, over 100 just in the last 2 years. And I have taken hundreds of my students to visit colleges. Last year, we saw Monmouth, we saw Princeton, we saw TCNJ, so public, private, big, small, enclosed city, high acceptance, prestigious, low acceptance, just to kind of get a feel for it. Try them on for size. And for me, I want to teach my students and their parents how to visit a college like a pro, so they can really understand what they're hearing, what they're seeing, know what questions to ask, know what to do before and after any college visit, know how to see through the sales pitch, because that's what it is. It's a marketing pitch. Know what follow-up questions, when they say, we give so much free money, if you make under this, we're going to give this education to you for free. And then I say, are you need blind? And they say, well, no, we're not need blind. Oh, okay. That means they might only choose to accept like 5 or 10 students who would qualify for that free money they just bragged about. So those follow-up questions, that's so important. But starting to visit college, 10th grade's a good time. Younger than that, their head's in the cloud. And most importantly, when they visit a college, they should take notes. They can even to take some pictures. They should ask questions. Too many times the students walk around a college and they're looking down, they're looking at their phone, they're hanging back, and the parents are asking all the questions. And you know what the tour guide is learning? They're learning the student's not really interested to be here. So when the student asks questions, that's what they like. Another question here, this one's from YouTube. Is straight A's a must, or a mix of A's and B's is good enough for top 50 schools? A top 50 school, you're looking for A's. As we said, in 2018, 55% of students graduated with an A average, which, yes, may include some B's in an average, right? But if you want to get into the top 50 schools, you need to be in the top tier of your school, of your high school class, In New Jersey, we have something called the NJ STARS program, which is a full ride scholarship to our public community colleges. If a student is in the top 15% of their junior or senior class. So once they're done with their junior year, they can ask their guidance counselor, do I qualify for the NJ STARS scholarship? And if this guidance counselor says, yes, you would qualify, you are eligible for the NJ STARS scholarship, that means they're in the top 15% of their class. And if they are, then maybe some top 50 schools could belong on the reach part of their list. But if the guidance counselor says, no, you wouldn't qualify for the NJ STARS scholarship, then they're not even in the top 15%, not top 5, not top 15% of their class. And then why should they get into an Ivy or a top 50 school, essentially ahead of somebody else who is in that top 15%? But that's why the list should be a mix of colleges, of reach and fit and safety. Too often, students say, well, Stanford is my reach and Harvard is my fit and Princeton is my safety. You're nuts. You're nuts. So, yes, if there are some top 50 schools that your student has seen and loves and is the dream, put it on the list. But keep in mind that, A's are better than B's. Academic rigor is important. And they're only going to accept so many students from your high school. You're competing against the other students at your school. Another one from YouTube. Do colleges need W-2 and 1040 forms to be submitted as some colleges asked? So if some colleges asked, then those colleges need. For the FAFSA, no. You fill out the information on the FAFSA and you swear under penalty of perjury, it's a felony if you lie, that you told the truth. For the CSS profile, for those 155 colleges that request it, some, not all, ask for the IDoc, where you have to upload your documents, which, yes, for some schools could include the 1040 and the W-2s and the 1099s, sometimes just the parents, sometimes the students as well. So if they're asking, then they're asking, and then you need to send it if you want to be eligible for need-based aid. If you say, look, Eric, we're rich, we got millions of dollars sitting in the bank, we're just going to pay the price, it's fine, let our money fund somebody else's scholarship, that would help them. Well, then no, you don't have to send them anything. You don't have to send it at all. But if you'd like to save money, then follow the rules that they're asking for. From YouTube, is it beneficial to take AP courses individually? Will it be added to the transcript? That's a good question. So if your high school doesn't offer certain AP classes, can you do self-study? Can you pursue that class outside of the high school setting? Yes, you can. And yes, seeing a student pursuing things above and beyond what their school offers is looked upon favorably. The AP test score will get counted toward your credits. Typically, the class itself would not go on your high school transcript unless, talk to your guidance counselor and see if that's something that they're able to do at your high school. You can find that out. Generally, no. But yes, they like that. And I think the important thing is the idea of pursuing an AP class outside of high school using self-study is not to load up on APs, because that they just judge you based on what's available at your school. If they didn't offer it, it's not your fault. But what it can be used for is take a class your student is interested in, passionate about, that just your school doesn't offer. So if your student wants to take AP computer science because they really love computer science and they want to learn that level of it, and your high school just doesn't have a teacher for it this year, so it's not offered, then that's a good reason to do that, to do an AP class outside of school and take that test at the end of the year. Is a student with non-immigrant status or no green card still considered international student in out-of-state college and has premium fee? Yes, if your student is, non-immigrant, yes, if non-immigrant status, non-immigrant, non-citizen status?
Yeah, it's non-immigrants. They're probably in the visa status.
Maybe H1 they're talking about H4
Oh, got
visa.
you. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, if your student is here temporarily on a short-term visa, they have no green card, they have no citizenship, they have no permanent resident status, then they're considered an international student. If they're applying to colleges in New Jersey, they still qualify for New Jersey benefits. But if they're applying for a college out of state, then each state does its own thing. And off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with what the other 49 states do in terms of non-citizens, non-permanent residents. So if you have non-immigrant status, no green card, you likely would be looking at paying the full price. There are a small number of colleges that do still create need-based scholarships